All right.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast. We love you. Here we are.
And this is episode 5.5, I think.
That's right.
For Idiocracy.
Idiocracy, 2006.
Yep. Mike Judge film. Mike Judge prophecy. Yeah, I think we sort of chose this as a response to the recent election. I thought this would be a good one to watch. And yeah, I think it was hilarious and it holds up. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a deeply cynical movie, I think. But so maybe it's not totally accurate, but you know what? It's very funny.
It feels very in line with us having, or at least talking about some disaster movies last week with Independence Day, and we each mentioned a couple other disaster movies, and this is maybe the most satirical take on a disaster movie, perhaps.
Yeah, it's funny because in Independence Day, literally like millions or billions of people die, but it's actually a more optimistic movie than Idiocracy.
Yeah. Sadly. This movie also, great thing about this movie though, you know how long this movie is, Shane?
Like 90 minutes.
An hour and 24 minutes, baby. 84. Oh. We love it.
Yep. I can't wait till we pick 3-hour movies out of the bucket.
Oh, I'm waiting. I can wait.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we can just get right into it. The movie's written and directed by Mike Judge, who's creator of Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, and also Office Space. And it was also co-written by Ethan Coen.
Yes, not
Ethan Coen, not the Coen brother. He moved the H from the first name to the last name.
That's right.
Went from Ethan Coen to Ethan Cohen. But yeah, I mean,
who was the writer of Tropic Thunder?
Yes, he was like a writer on a bunch of 2000s comedies. It looked like.
Yeah,
but yeah, Tropic Thunder is probably his best credit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basic plot summary is Luke Wilson plays Joe Bowers, who is AKA Not Sure, who is like an army librarian, basically, who just sits on his ass all day and does nothing, basically. And he's the most average person ever. He's completely average at everything. And the army tells him to go into they kind of order him, I guess, that he has to go into a pod, and they're gonna basically cryogenically freeze him for a year, along with a prostitute played by Maya Rudolph, Rita, who they pay her to be involved in the experiment. And then some shit goes down, and they don't get unfrozen for 500 years, and they awaken in the year 2505, and these completely average or below average people in our time have become the smartest people on Earth. Humanity has devolved. Everyone's become an idiot, literally. And yeah, hijinks ensue, I guess. Yeah,
that's pretty much the summary for just getting into, like, if you read just online what the movie is, that's probably it. It's just crazy how kind of quick that part of this movie goes by, because it covers a lot of stuff. It introduces us to this weird intro about, like, you know, how the smarter people stopped having babies, leading to the less smart people to have more babies and whatnot.
There's like a southern white couple with like stereotypical southern accents, and they're like, their house is a shithole, and there's like, it's just horrible, and they're having kids popping babies out all the time. And then there's like a sort of coastal elite like couple. They're like, well, the economy's not quite right. We're not gonna have, well, 5 years later, and then they have all these problems, so they never have kids. And then the idiot couple, quote unquote, has like 1 million kids in the meantime.
Yeah, there's also some narration going on throughout the movie that starts here and is very prominent, obviously, during that intro part. But it carries out a little bit through the movie at some points that I don't like. I'm just gonna jump in right away and say, like, I didn't really think the narration in this movie was helpful for me or important.
I agree. I think, I don't know how true this is, but it felt like a studio note to me. of
Mm.
like them trying to get through things. Like there's multiple times where voiceover will like cut off a scene or like almost skip a scene and it'll be explained in voiceover rather than us actually seeing the scene itself. So
Yeah.
it just kind of felt like the studio trying to like quicken things up and uh I don't know. It felt out of place in certain scenes.
Yeah.
Most scenes, to be honest. I think it worked like in the
Yeah.
beginning, and it was. I laughed at it once. Later on, I think, but yeah, it's pretty out of place.
Yeah. And I think that, as well as some of the other stuff that's going on, just like the way that people are depicted and stuff, kind of gives this movie maybe a divisive stance to start with. In terms of its ratings, it's got 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, 61% audience score, 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and 3.0 on Letterboxd, which gives it an average of 6.425 out of 10, which is definitely not our lowest movie we've covered, but it is on the lower end of some of the movies we've covered. And I think, not that the narration or voiceover is a big part of that, but I do think that the way that they're portraying dumb people is probably a big part of that. I feel like there's definitely some mid 2000s humor in this movie and a lot of quotes that we can't say in this movie.
But a lot of the non-PC language is said by the idiots, like
Yes.
of the future. So it's kind of is. I think it's fine.
Yeah, and I think that like the way that they portray the idiots isn't actually like I think people might find that offensive, but I don't think that's like the point here, right? I think the point is that the people are supposed to be like, you're supposed to think that they're outrageous, right? And whatnot. So I think that for some reason, and I think some of those things might be involved, there is like some divisive stance on this movie. But overall, I'll say I thought it was like pretty fun. I had seen it before, and rewatching it this time, I didn't laugh quite as many times. Maybe because I was like going in cynical, right? I'm like, this is actually reality now. Wait, but I thought it was a fun movie with a cool story and a kind of maybe depressing prophecy that we might see. But
Yeah, I agree that it's not like laugh out loud, like hilarious throughout, like joke a minute, like quick like that. But when there are jokes that land, like they landed really hard for me. Like I
yeah,
had big laughs. So even though maybe the laughs aren't super consistent, what I think I was always entertained. And then when there was a big laugh, it was a big laugh, you know?
yeah. And there's
But
just the underlying like satire of like, you know, what's going on here, that even if not funny, is like making a stance at something that I think is really well done for the most part in the movie.
yeah, I really like it. I do understand some people saying this is sort of like almost classist or just, you know, I don't know, the way that people become idiots in the future. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's mean spirited, really. Like
Yeah.
this is a pretty mean spirited and cynical movie, I think. But sometimes that makes for good comedy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think also at the beginning, Joe being like the most average guy does help a little bit of he's our most relatable character and he's not like a genius or he's not like, oh, I'm so much better than everyone else. Like he is really down to earth and normal. So he's relatable for the average audience member, obviously.
Yeah, he's not on either of the extremes that we see at the beginning, right? Like the like you said, like coastal elite versus maybe like the what seems to be like some interpretation of like a redneck family, right? But
I could see people finding that offensive too.
yeah, definitely. And I actually think like I feel like starting off this movie with that segment, the like the family tree thing, they're showing the family trees of the like redneck family like growing really rapidly, and then the family tree of the like single couple family not growing at all, and then eventually like the guy is dead, so she's like, yeah, I'm still waiting for someone or something. But I think like that whole part of the movie, I think would have just been better not to have, because like the way that people like looking, I think especially looking at it in hindsight, because like the way that this is actually like coming true in reality is more about the like the over stimulation, right? Like the So when Joe wakes up for the first time, he's like crashed into, it's Frito's house,
Frito.
right? The little,
yeah, it's Frito's.
He's crashed into Frito's house, and Frito's like sitting on this giant, like huge chair that like clearly is made to sit in for the entire day or something, right? And drinking out of a tube, and is like watching
Brando, probably.
Yeah, right. And is watching this show that has like no narrative. It's just about some guy getting hit in the balls, and
called Ow My Balls.
Ow My Balls, of course. And on the TV, of course, like this is one of the pieces that I think people have kept going back to in this time is you have like all around the edge of the screen, you have tons of advertisements and flashing things and all sorts of other stuff. It's like for the split moment that your attention is gone away from the rapid cutting of some guy getting hit in the balls, you can see, don't worry, you can still see flashing lights on the side of your screen, and there's always that stimulation for you. And it's very reminiscent of like Subway Surfers at the bottom of your TikTok, where like the people talking is not enough. You have to have some totally unrelated thing going on.
Or even like, and I'm guilty of this, like you're like, you have something on a TV, and then you have something on like a computer or a laptop, then you have something else on your phone, and you're like multitasking, and you're doing like, but you're not really focusing on anything. And I think I see what you're saying. Like if they had gotten rid of that early part, the early part does make it seem like the descent into idiocracy is more of a genetic thing.
Right.
But really it's more of a social, it's like, caused by environment, you know?
Yeah.
So if they had gotten rid of that part at the beginning, perhaps it would have been a more like nuanced like understanding of how this happened.
Yeah, because it also seems like in the world of Idiocracy, like the people are fueled by that like overstimulation, and they're fueled by like just accepting what corporate like entities say, right? Like, oh, Brano has what the plants need, dude. And stuff like, right. And like, they're bombarded with advertisements every single place they go. And like politics and the court have all turned into just entertainment, right? Like, and these are things that are like actually happening in real life and making this transition. Like we don't need the whole genetics thing at the beginning to like explain how the world got here. But also, I don't know if that would have been as obvious in 2006, right? Like, I think today, where all this stuff is actually, like, obviously not to this scale, right? But where some of this stuff is actually happening, right? Like, politics is becoming a lot more about entertainment, and we are becoming overstimulated with the amount of media we're consuming all at once, right? And all this stuff is happening. Like, that wasn't as prominent in 2006, so maybe they needed some other way to explain it?
Yeah. I feel like maybe, I don't know, again, apparently from what I understand, like Fox like hated this movie. They didn't even want to release it. So they like buried it and did the most minimal release possible, because the movie, like all the sponsors in the movie get like shit on and are made fun of. Like, so Fox was like, this is horrible, we don't even want to release it. So they tried to bury it as much as possible. And I do wonder if like they cut it up and they were like, hey, like we need to put an explanation at the beginning. We had, like, there is definitely, this movie does have a feel of being like, you know, cut up by the studio a little bit here and there.
Yeah, maybe that also adds into like why they needed the voiceover there, is because they needed some way to explain it as well, because they were just told to explain it, right?
Yeah, it is kind of ironic that like that opening scene and the voiceover like explain things that don't need to be explained, and it kind of treats the audience as idiots. But yeah, kind of ironic.
Yeah, that is funny.
But
anyway, so moving away from all that stuff, I just wanted to throw in some of the potential criticism that this movie gets, and I think even just eliminating that first bit, I think would have helped this movie in hindsight. But I don't know if that's true at the time. But anyways.
I could see that, yeah, because they make it also like a natural selection type of a thing. They say that in the just voiceover at the beginning. Yeah,
and like if you start reading a lot of reviews about this, like you'll see people start mentioning like eugenics, and I think this movie is not advocating for eugenics. Like I'm just gonna throw that out there real quick for anyone that might misinterpret that.
Yeah,
but also. Yeah, I don't know if like the genetics factor was really needed, and I think it leaves that room for misinterpretation of what they were going for.
Right, but also I think that is kind of an unfriendly way to interpret it, just because
Yeah.
also like there is reality to poor people and having more kids. Like as countries get wealthier and more affluent, their birth rates kind of go down.
Hmm.
And like the like I think Cleavon is the name of the guy who has like a million kids at the beginning. Like part of the reason that his kids are probably stupid is that like they don't have a real family structure, and like they and maybe it is because of society, you know what I mean? Obviously they don't explain that in the movie, but I
Right.
think just saying that it's just a genetic thing, that one thing
Yeah.
because Cleavon is dumb, that means all of his kids are dumb. Like
Yeah.
in reality, it would have been more like environment and upbringing would be a factor. But also, all those kids are technically Cleavon's kids, so they're gonna have like probably an absent father and probably at the very least a dumb father, right? So they're kind of like starting like behind the eight ball, so they're at that disadvantage. So
Yeah.
I think that part, if it's just taken in as a factor rather than like the only cause, then
Right.
it's not as egregious, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But
Well, anyway,
anyways,
such a serious discussion about Idiocracy.
Yeah, let's jump into the humor of it all.
Well, one thing I have right here is that at the beginning, they show a Fuddruckers, and then over time it turns into a Buttruckers, and then it turns into a Buttfuckers.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was very funny. As time moved on, it goes from Fuddruckers to Buttfuckers.
Yeah. Also hilarious that like these two like cryogenic sealed coffins, right? That was owned by the US government end up in a landfill, and then that landfill ends up collapsing like 500 years later. And then when this thing flies through Frito's room, he doesn't even look away from his screen.
His name is Frito. Yeah, he's played by Dax Shepard, and he's very funny. His full name, I actually don't know if this is how bad of a word this is in Spanish, but his name is Frito Pendejo.
Mm.
I think that means like asshole in Spanish. So
Ah,
I don't think it's that bad.
yeah. Interesting.
But just having a name Frito is just funny. And
Yeah.
Dax Shepard is very, very convincing at playing a low IQ individual.
Yeah. And then we end up with other outrageous names like Terry Crews in this movie.
President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho. Also, Justin Long plays Dr. Lexus. Scarface plays Rita's pimp named Upgrade, spelled UPGRAYEDD. And then there are other characters credited such as Horny Guy, Trashy Guy, Slutty Girl, New Slutty Girl, Trashy Teen Jock, and, of course, Beef Supreme.
Oh man, Beef Supreme.
Yep. And also, like, Thomas Hayden Church plays the Brondo CEO, he's like in literally like one shot. He's in like 5 seconds of the movie. And yeah.
That's right. Yeah, he's all mad at the cabinet members.
Because once they replace the
Brondos.
Brond with the water, yeah. But also it's called the Great Garbage Avalanche of 2505.
That's right.
Which is funny. I do think that's also like those scenes with the garbage. Obviously, it's kind of like bad early 2000s CGI, and there are moments of that, which I think at this point it's like has its charm, and it doesn't bother me. But just the amount of garbage is also funny, but also has true to our potential future, I think.
Yeah. I mean, also like thinking of just like names, like these names are hilarious and outrageous, but also like, again, thinking back to like reality, right? Like what are Elon Musk's kids' names again? Like, I know that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
But, and I don't actually know how to say one of his kids' names.
It's like AEX 112 dash like 9 or something like that.
Yeah. And I know that's an extreme example, but when a very, very wealthy person does that, I'm sure there are people that are following suit, right? Making random weird symbols and names for their kids.
Yeah. And not to be offensive, but he is a very stupid like rich person. Like of all the rich people, he might be the dumbest.
Yeah.
But not to get too into that, but also, well, there is a certain word that is constantly used in this movie, which I technically am not supposed to say, but I have here that the voiceover explains that Joe sounds pompous and gay, although they don't actually say
Yes.
gay. And I thought that was hilarious that the voiceover says that.
Yeah, it says it a lot.
Does it say that a lot? Well, that's what
Yeah.
people. I do think it's kind of makes sense that that word is like stayed in popular parlance in the Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Like it may just make sense that these characters would be speaking the way that they speak. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they say all sorts of stuff that I think we don't say as much as even in 2006. Like I think some of these words were much more common, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, the Justin Long as Dr. Alexis, that sequence is probably my favorite in the whole movie. I just think it's hilarious. And I wanted to use it for the opening quote, but it would not have been a good idea probably to start our podcast with me saying that. But I agree. For the record, that's like one of the funniest scenes. I just think Justin Long is it's just, I don't know. It's just funny for a doctor to be such an idiot and such a bro, like a dumb bro.
Yeah. Yeah, that's even like he gets to the hospital right after Joe has woken up. And he gets to the hospital and is like, because he maybe thinks that like he's not sure what's happening, right? He's like, maybe they gave me hallucinogenics or something, whatever. So he gets to the hospital and the nurse there is like trying to. Well, first of all, everyone waiting at the hospital is playing like slots.
Yeah,
that's funny. And then he's waiting in, and then he goes to talk to the like nurse at the front. And she's trying to like match what he's saying to like these really crude, like terrible symbols of like injuries and stuff that are like just the most like cartoonish things, right? Like a broken bone or like whatever. And then he gets, and then,
people, do you think they don't ever mention this, but are people illiterate in this future?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if they ever do mention it explicitly, but there are times when people are trying to read and they can't read, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and you don't see anyone reading.
Yeah.
I don't even think there are like magazines in this world. Even like tabloids are not dumb enough for this population, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that. So he goes to he wakes up. Frito's pissed off at him because he's like interrupting out my balls. He goes to the doctor. There's the scene with Justin Long. And then he's on the run because he doesn't have his tattoo. He can't pay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then he gets to court, right? Now he's going to court.
Yeah, at first, the only other thing before court is the Carl's Jr. machine, which I very much like that scene.
Oh, yeah.
There's the woman that's trying to get food and she doesn't have money. Like, I think it takes her money and then it doesn't give her any food. And then now she has no money and it's like, your kids are starving. You are an unfit mother. Carl's Jr. will take them into custody, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is one of the many hints of like the corporate companies here just being in charge of a lot more, right?
Everything,
right? And it gets into much more of that as we go on. Like there's like even in like the Supreme Court or whatever, there's like just advertisements in there of all of these companies and stuff. But,
yeah, I mean again, it's hard to know what was changed by the studio or how this evolved, like from the original script and all that kind of stuff. But I do think there is like an anti-capitalist message in the movie of like Brando owns the Department of Agriculture or something at some point. Like the privatization of everything has been part of the reason why society has fallen into idiocracy.
Yeah, even like apparently child services has been privatized to Charles Jr.
Yeah, so like, I don't know. I think the people that are interpreting this in such an unfair way are not like giving it the benefit of the doubt and seeing that there are more nuanced and interesting messages in the movie.
I agree, totally.
But yeah, so at the Carl's Jr. machine, he gets arrested. Joe gets arrested, so then they go to court. Also, this is a part where the voiceover is funny, but I'm not supposed to say the word, so therefore I'm gonna just on.
Yeah, they keep because he talks like we talk today. He talks very average, right? But everyone in this time talks. They just have like a dialect, right? A dialect that doesn't make them sound very smart, I would say.
It's definitely like a dumbed down version of English. It's a little like bro-ish kind of. I don't know. It's most of the characters kind of talk like that.
so everyone thinks that he talks weird, and they use a certain word to describe that.
You can say it if you want.
I'm
not stopping you.
While I am allowed to say that word, I'm not going to.
Oh, come on. No.
It does start with an F, and it.
Yeah, everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But this is actually a different word that I'm talking about in this part.
Oh.
Justice was not only blind, it had become quite a bit stupid, basically.
Oh, yes. That word is also said a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
But I thought that was funny. I enjoy it. I think, it is what it is. And it's kind of funny that the voiceover is just using the language that the people would use in Idiocracy, right? I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, the voiceover is probably the worst part of the movie. It's pretty unnecessary and, doesn't need to be there at all. But it has got a couple chuckles out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, at court, Frito is Joe's lawyer, and Frito is like, Joe's like, no, I didn't do anything, and he's like, that's not what the other lawyer said. And then Frito basically like gets him convicted.
Yeah, yeah. By the end, Frito's like objecting to nothing and like trying, like just making bad arguments against Joe, which is, he's like, also, objection, this man broke into my house while I was trying to watch, what's it called again?
Ow My Balls.
Ow My Balls, of course. And the whole courtroom is like, and yeah, not a good lawyer.
No, a horrific lawyer.
But he gets his law degree from Costco.
Yeah.
So
that's funny. Everything is Costco. And there's also like the huge like surveillance state. Like after this, he gets like convicted, and they have to put his ID tattoo on. That's when he gets his name, Not Sure.
Yeah.
Because of the like machine. It's also funny the way everything is automated and it just doesn't work. Like that's just feels relatable. But he gets this ID tattoo and it'll scan it at any time. There's like, it seems like there's cameras everywhere constantly scanning his stuff, and like, oh, there's Not Sure. And then the cops come after him. And there is definitely an element of part of society going to shit is the surveillance state and people having no freedom or sense of like self. They're just kind of like idiots just walking around, like consuming their slop, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like the whole wrist tattoo thing is a very dark part of this movie. And it plays it off for jokes. And I think a lot of the movie there's a lot of dark parts to it, but yeah, like that would suck. Yeah.
And there are people with, they don't ever like explicitly mention it, but there are people with like corporate sponsors tattooed on them.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure like one of the prison guards has like a Brando tattoo on his neck or something like that. Like, and also the guy in the cabinet later on is like sponsored by someone. Maybe, is it Carl's Jr. or something? I don't remember. Or Brando, I don't know. But every time he says something, it's like brought to you by Brando or whatever.
Yeah. And and even Not Sure or Joe or whatever is like, why do you keep saying that? He's like, because they're paying me every time I say it.
Yeah. But it just shows like the way the surveillance state, advertising, consumerism, like it's very much showing the worst version of like these elements of society just taking over.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in the plot, Joe sort of he escapes prison by just telling one of the idiot guards, "Oh, actually, I'm supposed to be leaving today." And he's like, "You idiot! You're in the wrong line." And he gets sent to the other. It's pretty funny. It's a very good prison escape.
That might have been my favorite sequence in the movie, actually, just because it was just so basic, so easy. It was just funny.
Yeah, and then as he like runs out, there's like two turret like guns, and they like start shooting, and they spin and they shoot each other.
Yeah, another hint of the whole like automation thing, right? Which you get hinted at too with Justin Long as the doctor, right? With like he's just trying to give this guy like plugs to put in certain places, and like is the machine supposed to say what's wrong with him, right?
Yeah.
There's one part where you see a robot vacuum that is just like hitting a wall, and it keeps saying, "Your floor is now clean. Bloop. Your floor is now clean," and then it keeps hitting the wall.
Yeah,
and that's
funny. And all the cars are automated as well, I believe.
Oh, are they? I didn't even notice that part. But so there's lots of little like everything is like automated as much as it can be,
Hmm.
And yeah, like you had mentioned, some of it's very relatable with like trying to do things today and like the automated process.
Yeah, and I think it does show that automation can just have these negative impacts on people of making people rely on it and becoming incompetent because of that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, very unrelated, but I just finished reading the fourth Dune book, and there's a whole element of in Dune about automation, and the
Ooh.
reason Dune is the way it is because basically artificial intelligence got too intelligent and people were relying on machines and everything, so they had a jihad against the machines, and that's why there's no like artificial intelligence in that universe. But yeah, so people see it, like it's obvious that artificial intelligence and the automation of everything is probably not going to be super. There's going to be positive aspects to it, but if you rely on it too much, it's going to have negative impacts on humanity, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Idiocracy. This is like our deepest conversation about the stupidest movie.
I know. It's funny that I think
but
this
it's not a
movie,
stupid movie. Like it
Right.
is stupid humor, but it has a lot on its mind, I think, and it is commenting on a lot of serious topics.
and it is like one thing to emphasize, like you said, it is very stupid humor. Like I would say a lot of the jokes maybe would have hit better for me in 2006, but and
You were
maybe they
9 years
did.
old.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe they did. Like I said, I've seen this before, and I do remember like thinking it was maybe a little more funny than I did this time. Like I wouldn't say the humor is really the selling point of this movie, right? It is those like deeper thoughts and the deeper meaning behind it, and that's at least why I liked it so much. But
Yeah, I think that adds to it. If I think if it was just one or the other, then like because if it doesn't have any humor, then it's like the CGI is kind of bad, like the
Right.
production design's not great, like it's not that cinematography is kind of bland. It's an early 2000s comedy, but and if it just had the humor without any of the social commentary, then it's kind of just like an okay early 2000s comedy. I still found it funny, but it wouldn't have the staying power that this movie has. I think combining them is like a unique combination. Like there's really not any movie like this. Like if we're talking about like a satire with this type of humor, like when I think of satires, I think of like Doctor Strangelove, which obviously has like silliness to it. Like literally someone gets like a pie to the face in that movie, but ultimately it's like a pretty intelligent movie. And it doesn't have like a lot of stupid humor like this. So I think it's kind of like an interesting balance of the two. And I enjoyed both aspects of it.
yeah, and I definitely agree. I mean, there was definitely parts that I thought were very funny, but I think for me, I definitely leaned more into, or maybe less into the humor this time than I had remembered in the past. But
Gotcha. That makes sense. And part of it is like, I think there is kind of a laughing at people. Like obviously they're fake
Right.
characters, but I think actually it is like mean spirited in a way. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's kind of trying to be a cautionary tale. And so using this future society as the butt of a bunch of jokes, like just works for me. And also it is kind of a way to get away with using un-PC language because you can just have the idiot characters say it and then it's still in the joke, but also you're laughing at the person that's saying it, so it's a little, they're kind of getting away with it.
although it like to bring up another point is there is a time in the 2005 world before they're locked away when the doctor that's gonna put them into cryostasis or whatever, he's walking back into the room and they're both ready, and he says something that he probably should not have said.
What does he say? I don't remember. Do you remember specifically?
I do, but I'm not saying it.
What did it just say?
He
What
walks
does he
into the
say?
room and says something like, y'all ready? And says a word that I can't say.
What does it start with?
It starts with the N.
Wait, he
Yeah.
says that?
Yeah,
The
I had to
N-word?
rewind it a couple times. Yeah, I rewinded it and put the subtitles on to make sure I was like hearing it right.
Oh, I totally missed that.
Because
So this
also,
Is this the army guy who hangs out with Upgrade?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. Well, that's funny because that's why he's saying that. That's funny. But I gotta go back and watch that.
I had to go back a couple times because I was like, there's no way he just said that. Because also the characters like didn't react a whole lot to it. So I had to rewind and put subtitles on to make sure I actually heard it right. And I was like, what the hell?
Where did you watch this? Just out of curiosity.
Where did I watch this? I watched this on...
Did you rent it or did you...
No, it was streaming somewhere. Hold on.
I think it's on Hulu.
That's where I watched it, yeah.
Okay. Well, interesting, because I rented it on like Xfinity, and I think it's possible that they cut that out. Which that would piss me off. That I paid you money and then you just censored a movie. Yeah. Maybe I just missed it. Like, it's definitely possible that I just missed it, but I think it's also possible like that they censored it.
It was definitely... Yeah, that's interesting. It's definitely like the only moment I think in the... Well, that whole character, I guess, in the 2005 world, before they get cryo-sealed or whatever, that character, like you said, he's the one that hangs out with Upgrade and whatever. And then, he's showing the slideshow. I forgot about that. He's showing the slideshow and it goes through and he's like, I had to gain his trust or whatever, right? And then it's showing a picture of him hanging out with Upgrade and then another one. And they're like, can we get beyond this? We get it. And then he's trying to slide through it, but there's like 20 or 30 like pictures of him just like drinking and hanging out with people. And that whole character is kind of like a character of itself in 2005, in the 2005 world before they leave. That kind of feels more like the Idiocracy characters of 2505, but
I guess
in the 2005 world. But
yeah, I could see that. It's funny. I pulled up the scene on YouTube. I remember I'm trying to see if there's anything that actually got cut out or if I just missed it. Because all this that I'm seeing right now, I did see, but I don't know if I saw the rest. Let's see. Anyway, also everyone wears Crocs in Idiocracy World, so that's something prophetic about the movie. I don't know if you noticed that. No. Yeah, if you go back, you can see everyone wearing Crocs.
That's funny.
That is so funny. Yeah, I guess.
You catch it?
I mean, I didn't have the sound on, but in the subtitles on YouTube, it said, all right, my blank. And so it could have just honestly like gone right back. I could have just missed it. It might not have been Xfinity.
I almost did miss it. And then like I said, I had to rewind it. I was like, what did he just say? And then I heard it again and I was like, I got to put subtitles on. I don't know if he's saying that.
That is so funny.
Yep. And then in the scene, neither of them react.
Yeah, that's funny. I think that's funny. I think it's funny that he like is this nerd and then he starts hanging out with a pimp and he's like, ooh, I kind of like this. And he's like pretending he wants to be like a pimp basically.
Yeah.
I found that character funny.
I wonder if he's what leads to the downfall of that cryogenic research facility.
It is because the authorities find him like part of a prostitution ring or something. And they like shut it all down. I think that's what causes the whole thing getting shut down.
I missed that part. See,
that's in voiceover. It's just explained in voiceover. And then when they like demolish the building and all that. Yeah. There you go. See, you miss crucial plot points. I miss N-words.
Yep. Yep.
Oh man. Well, anyway, back to where we were in the plot.
Yeah, where the hell were we? He's escaped jail.
He escapes jail and he's on the run. He sort of meets up with Frito and Rita, and Frito says there's a time machine, spelled time, Masheen. And so Frito is trying to bring Rita and Joe to the time machine, and they have to go into the giant Costco. I believe that's the next scene is when they're in the giant Costco.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Yeah. That is funny. Also, it's funny that job has not been automated.
Yeah, that is funny, huh?
You'd think it would be, but I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow. Flaw in the movie.
Yeah.
0 stars.
Yeah, trash. We're done.
Garbage.
I can't even finish this.
You know what would be funny if it was like community service.
Yeah.
You have to be like a Costco greeter for like community service or something like that. That'd be funny.
But yeah, so they get to the Costco, and then Wait, what the hell happens at the Costco? They're not
Well,
there.
they go to Costco and then they're trying to make their way through, but they get caught by like I think one of the things scan his tattoo.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So the police are
he like
coming.
just waves his arms, and the camera like sees his tattoo, and they get there super quick.
Yep. And then Frito ends up on like a train, and Joe is like trying to figure out how time travel works. He's like, "Well, if I go there, then this," and he like tries to figure it out, and it makes no sense. And I thought that was just a funny commentary about how time travel in movies makes no sense.
Yeah.
So then he's busy trying to figure that out. He misses the train, and then he gets brought to the White House because before we kind of skipped this, there was an IQ test, which is very funny. They're like, if you have 2 gallons of water in one bucket and 7 gallons of water in another bucket, how many buckets do you have?
And he's like, two?
Yeah. And everyone else, they have like blocks and like a square, a rectangle, and a star, and they can't put them in.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So he after he takes the IQ test when he's first going to prison, and they realize he's the smartest person alive, and so they bring him to the White House, and that's when I think they just tell him, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna be a Secretary of the Interior or something."
Yeah, and he's like, "I don't know what that means."
Yeah.
Which is funny for the average person in like today's world. I don't know what they do.
Yeah, I don't really know either. They Secretary of the Interior, obviously. You don't know that? But yeah, also the rest of the cabinet is very funny. All of those actors are really good. There's a Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Education is like legitimately like it's very stupid. Yeah, he's like playing with some like
some like orb thing in the corner.
Yeah. Yep. So basically, that's when we meet Camacho, President Camacho, played by Terry Crews. Maybe the most iconic performance in the movie. Also, he is a former wrestler and porn star. And
he has a crazy cabinet.
This is feeling more and more real.
It's not 2505 yet, but
right. If only Donald Trump had that hair and that physique. Come on.
Oh, yep.
Actually, Camacho also probably wears like a wig.
That's true.
Right? Like his hair does not look real.
Yeah. It does not look real at all.
So there's another parallel to 45/47.
Yeah.
Also, that's called at one point he goes to the House of Representing.
Yes. Yeah, everything. There's so many times too where things are just like shorthanded in like slang, like text language, which is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and when they go to the House of Representing, there's like a whole spectacle to everything, and that felt very like Trumpian to me. Of like just the energy of it all, of this like a charismatic leader. I'm thinking of Dune because I've been reading these books and I just finished one, like the 4th one, but that whole series is all about like charismatic leaders and how that can lead to tyranny and all that kind of stuff. And I think there's a lot of that in this Camacho character, of him just being charismatic and likable. So even though he's an idiot, he gets people to support him regardless. And I mean, obviously Trump is the same way.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. So yeah, Camacho has like a speech, and that's when the South Carolina, I love that. He's like, I know shit's been all fucked up and there's a lot of bullshit with all the starving and shit, but I'm going to fix everything. I got a plan. And the people are like, that's what you said last time. You're a dick. And he's like, yeah, South Carolina, what's up? Love that part.
Yeah, this movie is very quotable. When you can quote it, it's very quotable.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can quote it a lot in the privacy of your own home. Also, I noticed something about the language in the movie. Everyone says "scro" a lot.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's like scrotum. Like, are they calling each other like short for scrotum, or is it like a version of bro? It's like bro plus scrotum is scro.
I didn't even notice that.
I wrote that down. I put SCRO in quotes up here.
Scro. Ugh. I don't like that.
Also, utilize means like have sex with.
Yeah, they say that a few times. That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very like it's a very like misogynistic world too. That's something that we haven't really talked about, but it's very much so a world made for men, which is, weird to
Yeah,
see.
definitely. Yeah, I think that could also be another thing that it's commenting on, of sort of those aspects of culture, like letting that run rampant would be a real detriment to society, obviously.
Yeah, like I think Starbucks have turned into like, are they like
hand jobs.
Oh yeah, hand job. Yeah.
Because Joe at one point is like, I could really go for Starbucks, and Frito's like, we don't have time for a hand job right now, Joe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically, they say it at the beginning, but there's like a dust bowl going on. All the crops are going to shit. So they bring in Joe, and they realize they've been watering the crops with Brondo, which it looks like Mountain Dew or Gatorade. It's kind of a Gatorade. Everyone's like, it's got electrolytes. So he realizes if you put water on the plants, it'll help. Yeah, obviously that's how you grow plants. But yeah, like we said, Brondo bought the FDA and the FTC, I think.
Yeah.
So Brondo is in the water fountains.
Yes, it's everywhere. It's the like slogan for Brondo too is like, it's got electrolytes. It's what the plants need or something, right? And everyone repeats that when he's like bringing up the fact that they have to be watering plants with water, right? And everyone just keeps repeating that. And at one point he goes, "What does that even mean? What even are electrolytes? Do you even know?" And he's telling people like, you got to be thinking for yourself, not just listening to the slogans, right? And very the corporate anti-capitalist message was very prominent in that scene when he's I think they're back at the White House at that point.
Yes, he's talking to his cabinet, and literally the cabinet members are the people who are like,
right.
It's got electrolytes. It's what the plants need.
Which is also just a small little side note. It's hilarious that the cabinet like meets at this table in the White House, but like the table actually goes through like 2 rooms, and there's just like a big chunk of the wall broken out, like not classy, like torn down and like rebuilt or anything. There's just like a chunk of wall just removed so they can put a table in.
Yeah, that's funny. And like the front lawn of the White House has like an above ground pool and like a shitbox car like on like concrete blocks, type of thing. Like it just looks like a shitty yard, not the White House.
And even the gate for the White House, they've changed it so there's like there's a name for that stance or whatever, but it's like the Pindall lady, Playboy lady stance or whatever. I don't know. Pin-up, yeah. And just another like point of the whole like misogyny world, right? And
and it's sort of just trashy. Also. There's a way of like classless. Yeah, I think it is kind of taking that culture in the early 2000s of like, I don't know, like Pimp My Ride or like those type of like, I don't know, just that culture and taking it sort of MTV culture, maybe stuff like that. And just what if this was in the White House?
Yeah.
What if Jersey Shore became the White House? Obviously, Jersey Shore is after this movie, but that's kind of the idea, I guess. But yeah, basically the watering crops actually doesn't work immediately, so everyone is pissed off because they think it should magically just immediately fix all problems. So basically he gets, I mean, long story short, there's these big like angry mobs that felt very reminiscent of recent history.
Yeah, true. And this is because Brondo, he's on that conference call with the Brondo CEO or whatever, right? And he's yelling and he's saying that overnight their stock fell so much that the automated like employment system like automatically removed so many people's jobs or whatever. And another like hint at that whole automation process too of like, if we just let things be automated, then there's no safeguards and there's no safeguards, then things like that will happen where like if the stock drops so much and it just like cuts off everyone's job, like they mentioned like half of the US loses their jobs overnight.
Yeah. What? But also half the country worked for Brondo. Like Brondo basically has all the power. And it also does show the way certain companies, like even with like Tesla and stuff, the way that all their money comes from like government, like funds basically. And they use public funds to fund their private shit, and then they keep all the profits. Yeah. And this is like the most extreme version of that.
Yeah, things like Tesla, SpaceX, right? I mean, and like just think about like Amazon as a whole, right? Like Amazon too with all their stuff, but like all these just like massive mega companies that don't just own one thing, but like own all these different outreaching parts of our lives, right? Like every day we are like forced to interact with like several companies, right? Like Disney, Amazon, something in the Elon Musk world, I'm sure. Like all these things are just like forced on us every day because we don't even know who owns what stuff we're doing anymore, right?
Yeah, and everything is owned by like a few corporations, basically. Like Disney owns like ESPN, they own ABC, they
Right.
own Hulu, they own all this stuff. They own, and same could go for a bunch of other companies. Of it looks like there's more options than there really is.
Yeah, and in a way, it seems like the whole like Rondo owning the FDA or whatever, or whatever it is, doesn't even feel that far off, right? Like with companies just owning so much of what we consume in our daily lives, like it's easy to forget that like YouTube is owned by Google, right? And I'm sure that whole company owns much more stuff than we even realize.
Oh yeah, for sure. And in reality, like these corporations kind of have already bought off our like agencies. Like
Yeah,
everyone in like the FDA comes from some big corporation, and then usually they go back to work for them afterwards. They're probably getting
yeah,
huge bonuses. And then not to mention all of our elected officials are getting huge funds from corporations and from super PACs and all this, and they're basically completely bought off. So
yeah.
yeah, basically the whole country's gone to shit. It's all corrupt. It's horrible.
This episode is really just us getting out our frustrations here.
Yeah. Well, hey, at least the movie made me laugh. There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. Also, maybe good to just say, you know, I don't know. Well, yeah, just the context of when we're watching this, I think might be important. If you're watching this like months or years later or whatever, right? Like we have certain frustrations, I would say, about what's going on right now around us, and that
Yeah.
highlights in some of what we're saying, I think.
But even the things we're talking about now, like these have existed for
Right.
decades. Like Citizens United was like 2011 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all these things, or like surveillance with the NSA, like all that has been going on for years and years, and it goes through different administrations. So it's really just like an overall structural problem rather
Yeah.
than like necessarily relating to a certain election or a certain administration.
True.
So I think this movie is kind of commenting on these big social issues, basically, or at least
Yeah.
even if the movie doesn't explicitly explain this, it gives you the seeds that to think about it and discuss it. You know?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's like the best thing about this movie is that it does just open people up to this lens of communication of like, is the way that we're interacting with and consuming media and just other corporate stuff, right? Whether that's advertisements or even just like what we're buying every day and stuff, is this healthy, right? And I think there can be like open and healthy debates around that. But yeah, I think we clearly have our perspective on all this. And yeah, I will say watching this movie at times felt frustrating because it's like, you know, when politics is being just entertainment, right? It's like, stop. Like this, we don't want politics to just be entertainment, right?
Yeah.
But also, here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Totally
Anyway,
agree.
sorry. I'm going on a lot of rants on this episode.
That's all right. I think it's working out fine. It's going fine. Should we finish the plot summary?
Yeah.
It's really just, I mean, honestly,
We're
all
all
that
set.
happens is everyone gets mad at him. Yeah, everyone loses their jobs. So he gets like put into rehabilitation. There's also like a Fox News parody.
Yes.
Which is pretty funny. There's like a guy with like no shirt on and he's all jacked and he's wearing a bow tie. So maybe 20th Century Fox didn't like that also.
Yeah.
But they left it in, I guess. And yeah, the rehabilitation is actually like a gladiator type of event where it's the person who committed the crime or whatever against a person in a monster truck with all these like, that's just gonna kill. Basically, it's people being murdered for sport.
Yeah.
Yes. And he has to go against Beef Supreme.
That's right.
And basically he gets a little car with like a dildo on the hood.
Yeah. And he's going up against those two big trucks at first.
Right.
And then
he tricks
them
outsmarts them and they
crashing
crash.
in. Yeah. And then Beef Supreme, who crashes like trying to get into the place because his car is too big.
Yeah.
his monster truck. So and then he's in there with like a flamethrower and what is it? Just a rocket launcher, maybe?
Yeah.
Just shooting stuff. And meanwhile, Rita Rita sees that the plants are growing, so she's trying to get the footage into the stadium so that everyone sees the plants are growing, so that they can pardon Joe before he dies. And it works. Yeah. And it works. He's like barely hanging on, and everyone finally sees that there's plants on the TV.
Rita like outsmarts the guy like watching the cameras by being like, she's just like, oh, there's naked chicks outside, and he's like, oh, dude, and he leaves, and then she's controlling the cameras, and then Frito and I think maybe the Secretary of Defense or one of the cabinet members, yeah. They have the camera and they're trying to go to the crops to show that they're growing, but they get sidetracked by Starbucks.
Yeah,
because they have money and they're like, oh, we have money, like let's go to Starbucks. But then eventually, like, they trip and the camera just falls into the plants. Everyone sees the plants, and Joe gets pardoned. And then, they learn that the time machine was actually just a theme park ride. And then Joe and Rita get married.
Also, the time machine ride was a hilarious misinterpretation of history, of course. There's like Charlie Chaplin leading the Nazis.
Yeah. Yep. And the UN is called the UN.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So they get married, and it's funny. They're like, Joe and Rita get married. And they have 3 of the smartest kids on the planet, and then like Frito gets married and has like 32 of the dumbest kids on the planet, or something like that. And then that's the end. There is a post-credit scene, which is kind of, did you see it? I don't even know. I
didn't. No.
It's like, I think it's post-credit or maybe mid-credit, but it's literally just Upgrade in one of those pods, and then he gets out in 2505 and he's like, I'm gonna find that hoe or something like that, and then that's the end. It was honestly stupid and unnecessary, and it shouldn't have been there. I feel like at that time, post-credit scenes were just like a fad. Like, they were just, especially in comedies, it was like just a trend. So maybe they just felt the need to put it in, but it was unnecessary and kind of took away from the ending of the movie, I think.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a sweet ending. I'm glad that Joe and Rita get together, and the character, obviously we haven't talked about the characters much in this movie, but I do think like Maya Rudolph, and it's Luke Wilson, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Which is weird. Yeah. Luke Wilson. They're really good. And like, there's that scene where they see how everyone else is idiots, and Rita is like, you think Einstein thought everyone else was dumb shits? And Joe's like, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. And she's like, yeah, that's probably why he built that bomb. So like, even for modern day, they're obviously not the smartest people, but they're like, they're very likable. And by the end, like, I was happy that they end happily ever after, sort of.
Yeah, and and he's the president, I think, at the end, and it kind of gives you this hopeful perspective that maybe this world of Idiocracy can start to make some positive changes, by feeding plants water and other positive changes. Yeah,
and actually at the end, it's like, it says like Joe doesn't save the world, like he doesn't magically save everything, but he gets the ball rolling, and he tries to make the world a better place than it was before. And like, that is actually a very nuanced way of looking at history, and as not just the great man, like, oh, the hero comes and saves the day. Like, that's not reality.
Right. And that's like not what any of us can do, right? Like, the viewer of Idiocracy, we can't just magically do one thing or make one massive change that fixes the world, but we can like make positive changes and advocate for positive changes, and hopefully be a piece of the machine that helps things like turn into a more positive direction.
Yeah, 100%. Also, one other thing about the movie is that it's weirdly, for the early 2000s, it's weirdly pro sex worker. Yeah. Because Rita is a prostitute, but she's a very sympathetic character. Also, it's funny that she's like, oh, I paint. And then Joe never figures out that she's actually a prostitute. Like, it's just funny. I like that Joe Joe and Rita are, kind of just average people. They're not geniuses or anything either.
Yeah.
But they're still relatable, and you like them, and her being a sex worker doesn't preclude her from having the happy ending with Joe, or you know what I mean? And she's able to get past that. So it's not like, obviously, the idea of, it's not pro sex work or pro pimping and all that stuff, but it's sympathetic to her, and her like being a prostitute doesn't dehumanize her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, everyone who shits on this movie and says it's all about eugenics, like, fuck that. I don't think it is.
I agree. I think, you know, I mean, like, everyone, you know, have your own opinion, whatever. But I think hopefully at least us chatting about this, if you maybe went into this thinking that Idiocracy was all about eugenics or whatever, hopefully you're leaving with some more like holistic thoughts about what the movie's trying to accomplish. And if you still hate it, that's cool. But if you know, maybe you're going to come out of it a little bit softer for it.
Yeah, I think that's a very letterboxed like way of looking at it. Just because that some of the popular reviews say that, and I don't know.
Yeah, I think you know, we love Letterboxd, but also Letterboxd does, you know, the reviews that get like really popular. There's definitely a lot of bias there in which reviews get popular and why, right? And it's not often like super thought out like film critical reviews. It's more like, well, whatever.
A lot of times it's joke reviews, but I feel like with Idiocracy, it's like was more serious like takedowns of the movie.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. And like it's funny because even then on Letterboxd, Idiocracy still has a 3.0. So like, yeah, it surprises me the hate that seems to be so prominent for it. But with that being said, like I don't think it's like the most funny movie in the world or like the most clever movie, but I do think it does a lot of cool stuff that if you just take one piece of it and you say, well, this section at the very beginning seems to talk about eugenics, like it's a very like cynical way of looking at what the movie's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Also, there's the piece of this whole movie that we've mentioned a little bit that is also just really important, which is this movie was Fox tried really hard to censor this movie, right? They put it only in as like few theaters as they legally could or something, and stalled on releasing it even then. And obviously now it's out, which is good, and has been out for a long time, obviously. But there's also just something to be said about like the idea of censoring what people can watch just because of the way that corporate entities are portrayed in it, right? This movie wasn't being censored because of, you know, anything like overly grotesque or overly, I don't know why, like, you know, the way that normally movies have been censored in the past, which still is bad, but this movie is just censored because of the way that it looks at corporate entities, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
Ooh,
true.
Censorship bad.
Agreed.
Hopefully everyone agrees on that one.
Yeah. I think so. And I know some of the humor didn't work for you, but I do think this kind of stupid humor could be a way in for people. And then to get this message to a wider audience, maybe that is part of the goal of like if you have this type of social commentary and like some depressing, sad drama, like maybe it would be a really good movie, but it also probably wouldn't find a wide audience. And I think Idiocracy, maybe with the humor, was able to become like kind of a cult classic.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at like today, like I think something like Don't Look Up has like a similar perspective on some stuff, like the political satire of like the what is it? The president is like a very just like entertainer, right? And then all the cabinet members, like one of them's like her stepson or something, right? And like it's like a very goofy cabinet. And I think there's some analogs to that movie of like a interpretation on that part of the satire that it's going for. And I think that like that movie and this movie have very different ways to approach that. And I don't know. Yeah, like being able to approach it from different ways is all about why we should have cool, diverse cinema, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think this movie's more successful than Don't Look Up, in my opinion.
Yeah, at least that part. I mean, I think Don't Look Up tries to approach a lot of other stuff too. And I think it does some of that well, but some of it not so much.
Yeah, true.
I think the
Agreed.
political part of Don't Look Up is less interesting than like the like climate part that I think is cool. But
yeah, makes sense. Yeah, on Letterboxd, I have the list of recommendations for if you like a movie that we covered on the show. Here's another movie you could watch. And for this one, I thought Southland Tales was a good match for like an early 2000s sort of ambitious sort of comedy. Southland Tales is a lot more out there though. It goes to a lot crazier places, and it's a lot more divisive, I think. Although this one's pretty divisive too. But I thought that was a good match.
Nice. I haven't seen that one. So
Southland Tales is very. It's an interesting movie. It's an interesting movie. It's one of a kind. It was kind of like shit on release, but it's gotten like a cult following over the years, and I thought it was really good. Oh, hi Teddy. Oh, Teddy's here.
Oh my gosh, are we gonna get an appearance from?
I hope we can get a Teddy cameo. Buddy, come here. He's very fast, so he might just run away from me.
Well, here we go.
Should we give our ratings?
Yeah. So I'll say that I kind of had to average out some of the stuff about this movie because I thought there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, and some of that leaned me on a higher rating. But then again, like as I mentioned, like I don't think the humor really hit so much for me every time. So I think this lands kind of at a 3.0 for me.
Oh, okay. Nice. So. I give it 4 stars.
Nice.
I really enjoyed it.
Nice. It was hard not to give it like 3.5, but I think like there's a lot of cool stuff going on that I really enjoyed and like made me think a lot, which is great. But also, again, just some of the humor, and there's a lot of quotes in this movie that like
yeah, but they're said by the Idiocracy people.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave it at 3, I think, for me. But I was fair. Pretty close to 3.5 for this one. It's a pretty solid watch. Obviously, I think anyone that's watching this at this point has probably already seen it. But I think we'd recommend
Teddy cameo.
Teddy!
He's a star.
If you're watching us on YouTube, you get a nice little preview here, or a nice little shot of Teddy here.
Yeah, there you go. Everyone go watch the YouTube. You can. Oh, hi, buddy.
Yeah, this one. All right. If you're just listening to the podcast, you got to go to the YouTube channel, skip to the very end at least, and just see this adorable dog here.
Yeah, this is Teddy.
Oh,
he's the best.
Oh, he's so cute.
A little pause. Well,
what a good cameo.
So yeah, check us out on YouTube and all the podcast locations: Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Check out. Oh, I think I didn't say it at the beginning like I meant to. But check out our Letterboxd, Mind Your Movies. From there, you can find all our links. We have a Blue Sky account now, and we also have the Instagram. And also send us emails, mindyourmoviespodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
So that's how you can find us. And next episode, we'll be covering psychological thrillers. So we're going to be doing Perfect Blue and Saltburn.
That's right. Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn.
And then coming up on the half episodes, we got some Christmas movies. So
yeah, that'll be pretty fun. Also, if you're watching this on day of release, happy Thanksgiving. If you're in the US, if you're not in the US, I don't know, eat a good meal anyways tonight. if you're watching this on release. But
yeah. If you're not in the US, have a good Thursday.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We'll see y'all next week.